You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1431 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So the Rangers go into North Carolina. They take down the Hurricanes by a final score of 4-2, a very compelling case to be made. I would say that this was the Rangers' best win of the season. We're going to tell you why, and also give the star players their props for stepping up in a big way, and obviously an important game against a big-time division rival. We'll get to that in just a second, but we also want to mention that we're going to be discussing a little bit later the waiving of Juuso Parssinen and why that pretty much had to happen. I'll elaborate on that in just a little bit, and we're also going to give some props to the Rangers' new look third line of Brett Berard, Noah Laba, and of course, Jonny Brodzinski. And we will get to all that in just a second. But let's go ahead and start today's episode by, again, giving props to the Rangers just for winning the game in general. I mean, there's a tough opponent. The Canes are at the top of the Eastern Conference right now, and they've obviously been able to sustain success over the years. And one of the biggest reasons why the Rangers won this game is because their star players stepped up in a major, major way. You can go right through the list here. Artemi Panarin, he ends up with a goal and an assist in this game. The goal that he scored, I absolutely loved it because it came as the result of an offensive zone faceoff win, and it looked like the Rangers had a set play in mind here. We saw Trocheck and JT Miller talking to each other when they were going onto the ice, and they were able to execute, Trocheck over to Miller, Miller back to Fox across the ice to Panarin, for the one-timer. He hammers it home, gives the Rangers the lead at that point, and then the goal that made it 3-1. Just a brilliant play here. You've got Igor making a really nice save. That was also a theme of this night. Mika with a great play to move the puck out of the defensive zone, gets it up to Panarin. And Panarin, what a play here. He gets the blue line, and he goes immediately, basically parallel with the blue line to his right. Now, usually you don't really want to do that. You want to attack the net, obviously, right? But he was 1-on-3, and he realized that he had to, hold up and wait until help was on the way. And then there's Vincent Trocheck, and Panarin finds him, and Trocheck buries it. And what a start that Trocheck has basically had to his season. I mean, I know he played the 2 games earlier in the year, but for all intents and purposes, Trocheck kicked off his season when he got back recently, and he's on fire. Speaking of which, Vincent Trocheck, somebody that a lot of Ranger fans wanted to step up as the new captain of this team. Certainly he was in consideration, but he had a big night. We talked about, obviously, the goal that he just scored, what turned out to be the game-winning goal that made it 3-1 in favor of the Rangers. But Trocheck now with 5 goals, 3 assists in 9 games since returning to the New York Rangers. That's big-time hockey right there. And I think we all knew how much the Rangers missed Trocheck. But I mean, this really puts that on full display, seeing what Vincent Trocheck has been able to do since coming back, and obviously a whale of a game here. It's funny because the Rangers typically get destroyed by their own former players, so it is nice every once in a while when the Rangers have somebody, in this case Vincent Trocheck, who takes it to his ex-team, in this case taking it to the Carolina Hurricanes. But Trocheck, just an absolute workhorse, producing points at a high clip since returning to the lineup. He goes out there and hits everything that moves. 42 hits in 9 games for Trocheck since coming back from IR, and a guy that's just a complete workhorse for this team. Not uncommon for him to lead the team, or lead forwards anyway, in time on the ice on any given night. And then there's Igor Shesterkin, just a masterful performance by Igor here. 36 saves on 38 shots, and in a way, he kind of stole this game for the New York Rangers. It wasn't like the biggest example of Igor stealing a game throughout his entire career. But when you look at that stat line, I mean, that tells you part of the story. And you watch this game, he made a lot of big saves when the Rangers were either tied or up by a goal in this game. A couple of, saves down the stretch that were obviously very, very important. And look, bottom line, I don't care what team it is. I don't even care what level of hockey it is. If you are a goalie and you are able to win a game in which your team got outshot 38-18, as the Rangers did on this night here, then you are doing something right. And in a way, I think you pretty much have to classify that, at least somewhat, as a stolen win for that goalie and for that goalie's team. And obviously, Igor was big time. Something I noticed about Igor's performance in this one, a couple of really nice glove saves. There were a couple of high danger scoring chances that the Canes got from the slot area. I mean, not like an unacceptable, insane amount, of high danger chances from that area, as we've seen in the past, occasionally from this Ranger team, but enough of them where Igor had to be a difference maker, and he was. A couple of different instances where Igor was able to get his glove on the shot and at least deflect it wide of the net, if not catch it outright. And that's kind of been a theme early this season too with Igor, where a lot of the goals that he's given up have been glove side high into that corner of the net, and Igor obviously was ready for it tonight and was able to, like I said, fight those shots off and give his team a great chance to win. And obviously, they ended up doing exactly that. And one more player that I'll shout out here when it comes to, big time star players having big time nights, Mika Zibanejad. I thought he had a strong showing here. We talked about just a minute ago, he had the secondary assist on the Trocheck goal. Technically, he got an assist from the bench on this play because he moved the puck quickly out of the defensive zone up to Panarin. Mika went off. Trocheck jumped on. Trocheck scored a goal like 6 seconds later, but Mika does get the secondary assist on that one. But also some physicality from Mika in this game. He had a big hit early against Ehlers where he sent him to the ice. And he also made a play, did Mika Zibanejad, that basically sealed the win for the New York Rangers. The Canes are down by a goal. They got the goalie pulled 6-on-5, minute and change to go. And, the Canes are kind of working the puck around the perimeter. Mika challenges his guy at the right point, knocks him right down to the ice, knocks the puck out of the defensive zone and into the neutral zone. Will Cooley is there. He picks it up, and he shoots it down to the ice and into the empty net and puts the Rangers up 4-2, and that was also the final score. But what a play by Mika Zibanejad there. I mean, look, if he doesn't make that play, who knows what happens? The Canes are looking for the game-tying goal here. There's about a minute 30 to go, I want to say, give or take a couple of seconds in either direction. But, I mean, they've still got time. They've still got time to set something up, and Mika made sure that didn't happen, and obviously Will Cooley took care of the rest. But I was fired up when I saw that play from Mika. I don't always want to compare everything to last season, but in a situation like this, with Mika especially, at times it's inevitable. I just don't see him making a play like this last season. And even the earlier hit on Ehlers, I don't see anything like that from Mika Zibanejad last season either, at least not before the trade for JT Miller, when at that point he did pick it up a little bit. But that was a huge play at the end of this game by Mika Zibanejad, and props to Will Cooley too for being able to shoot it into the empty net from behind the red line there. So yeah, man, awesome to see the Rangers star player step up in a meaningful way in a big game against a division opponent. We said when the Rangers beat the Blues, because there were a lot of people at that time who were kind of rolling their eyes. Oh, yeah, good job. You beat the Blues. And I said at the time, like, look, they had to win this game. They did. That's what's important. They got back to playing defensively responsible hockey in that game. I think that carried over into this one as well. I mean, they gave up a lot of shots, but the Canes, we know they shoot the puck from every single angle on the ice. I don't think it was like a bad defensive performance by the Rangers in this one. But I also said at that time, the time that the Rangers beat the Blues, that if you really want to make it count, you got to figure out a way to go on the road and beat the Canes. And obviously, very tough Canes team in their barn. And that's exactly what the Rangers did. And everybody should be feeling good about it. So awesome stuff there. Very strong case to be made. I would say this was the best win of the season. It wasn't perfect. Like I said, the shot discrepancy was borderline out of control there. But the Rangers found a way to grind and get it done. And the biggest reason why is the star player stepped up in a big way. And the Rangers are going to need that, especially for a team that is so top heavy as the Rangers are. But in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. There was a transaction earlier today that involved Juuso Parssinen being waived, or I guess I should say he was waived yesterday, cleared waivers today, and is now with the Hartford Wolfpack. We're going to talk about that and tell you why it was pretty much a necessity for that to happen. And then we're also going to give some props to the new look third line of Brett Berard, Noah Laba, Jonny Brodzinski. We'll get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there is no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of a game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Big shout out to the everydayers as always. Thank you guys so much for supporting this podcast throughout all the ups and downs of Ranger hockey. For the everydayers, first of all, let me just say happy Thanksgiving to everyone who celebrates. That wonderful holiday will be upon us in just a couple of hours here as I'm recording this episode. But the next episode of Locked On New York Rangers is going to drop on Friday. The Rangers will play the Bruins on Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. So the episode will drop at some point after that, either in the late afternoon or at night, or, we'll see, but definitely on Friday. But for the meantime, let's go ahead and talk about this transaction that got a lot of people talking, and then we'll also dive back into some highlights from this game as well. But we're going to continue with Juuso Parssinen. He was waived on Monday by the Rangers. He cleared waivers, and he has now been assigned to the Hartford Wolfpack. And my initial reaction when this news was breaking, we all found out that something could be stirring, and I think it was Peter Boss sent out, a tweet about, Juuso Parssinen, he's not practicing because of some sort of roster management of some kind. And you start thinking like, oh, maybe there's a trade or whatever it might be. As it turns out, Parssinen was waived by the New York Rangers, and they're dealing with some injuries right now, are the Rangers, and they pretty much had to do this. They had to call up an extra defenseman. That ended up being Connor Mackey, who was, of course, a healthy scratch for this game here tonight. But it's just kind of a numbers game. You get JT Miller healthy and back into the lineup. Obviously, he's going to rejoin the lineup. Somebody had to be the odd man out, and somebody was basically going to lose their roster spot here and be placed on waivers or, something of the like. And there were only so many possibilities here. Obviously, Parssinen was an option because he's the player that they indeed did waive. The only other players I think you would even consider are Brodzinski, and I would not do that. I think this group of players that we've kind of lumped him in with, he's clearly the best player of that bunch. And again, we are going to talk about him and his line a little bit later in tonight's episode here. But I guess in theory, Brodzinski would have been an option, but it's not what I would have done. Connor Sherry, I suppose, could have also been an option as well. I know a lot of people are kind of on that train of moving on from Connor Sherry. He was a healthy scratch in this game. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. You've got Radish. I mean, apart from that random hat trick he had against the Sharks, this guy's basically done nothing. I know he kills penalties, but he would have been an option as well. Or you could have maybe sent down Brett Berard. But that would be crazy. I mean, he just got here. He played a strong game in the first one, and there's no reason to do that just because you're terrified of waiving somebody like Juuso Parssinen. And I should also mention right now that in the case of some of these players, it may not have worked because they don't make enough money where sending them down would allow the Rangers to have enough money to call up Mackey. I would have to, crunch the numbers and look at it a little bit closer. But as far as I saw a lot of people saying, oh, waive Sherry. You could have done that. But again, I don't know, because Sherry is on the league minimum. I'm not sure that him being sent down would have also then allowed the Rangers to call up Mackey for this game to serve as the seventh defenseman. So I don't know. I mean, as far as why it was Parssinen, though, as far as the hockey side of everything, again, you could have made a case for somebody else. But with Parssinen, I mean, he got a little bit of run with this team last year. He got a little bit of run with this team this year. I mean, he's never been a permanent fixture in the lineup, but he's gotten some chances. He's typically in the top 9 when he's in the lineup. He just doesn't really do enough. And I talked about this on a short YouTube video that we posted a little bit earlier today. With Parssinen, I feel like he's somebody that's almost kind of in no man's land. He's kind of caught between being a third liner and a fourth liner. And what I mean by that is, as far as him being a fourth liner, I mean, you look at him and certainly he has the size for it, right? Because when it comes to your fourth line, you're looking for guys to go out there for the most part and play big, play physical, establish some kind of a tone for your team for that game. That's not really Parssinen. I mean, I don't think he necessarily shies away from that kind of stuff, but he's not somebody that's going to be going out there and throwing the body every single night. So he doesn't really fit the profile, or I guess the playing style would be the better term, of a typical fourth liner. And then as far as him being a third liner, I mean, you could do it. The Rangers have obviously done it in the past, but there's just not enough offensive production there. There's not enough offensive prowess in Juuso Parssinen game for me to look at him as a bona fide top 9 forward. I mean, again, you could do it. The Rangers have done it. And maybe if he's the 9th of your top 9 forwards, you can get away with it for a little while. But I don't know, man. To me, there's just not a whole lot there to Parsons' game where you feel like you absolutely must hang on to him and where you're terrified of placing him on waivers. You look at somebody like Radish. I mean, he at least kills penalties. It's, a valuable thing that you can bring to the table if you're a depth player. But Parssinen doesn't even really do that. He's not going to play on the power play. He's not going to be somebody that's going to be on the ice in crunch time and in big time, crucial, critical moments of games. You're not going to have him out there in the last 2 or 3 minutes if you're up by a goal. He's not going to be out there if you're down by a goal or if it's tied. So with all that said, I think to me, it just made the most sense that Parssinen would be the odd man out. And I've got nothing against the guy. I mean, he's doing the best he can out there, but tough decisions have to be made. And you couldn't send Berard back down. and you need to call up a defenseman, I mean, facts are facts. You have to make a transaction, and Parssinen was the one that, unfortunately for him, paid the price for it. Something else that I think really hurt Parssinen this season, and this is through no fault of his own, really, but it was the emergence of Noah Laba. Because going into training camp, we did an episode on here where we took a look at some training camp battles and, who's going to be on the top power play unit and who's going to be the sixth defenseman and who's going to be on the penalty kill and who's going to be the third line center. And that was the one that involved Juuso Parssinen. Those may not have been all the exact same topics, but you get the idea. We were talking about position battles during training camp in the preseason. And the one that we really kind of honed in on was the battle, or the seeming battle, for third line center. And it looked like it was going to be contested between Juuso Parssinen and Jonny Brodzinski. And I said at the time, one of these two guys could open the season as the third line center, and the other could honestly not even make the team and end up on waivers. And as it turns out, Noah Laba changed all of that because he had an awesome showing at the rookie series. He was great in the preseason, the training camp. He basically forced the Rangers to take notice and essentially just kind of kick the door down and force his way onto the Ranger roster. And that third line center job was his, and I have not seen a single person complain about that. I think people are really happy with what Noah Laba has brought to the table for the New York Rangers, but it definitely did hurt Parssinen because that was his spot right there. He was at least going to have a chance to compete for that spot. But once Laba, again, pretty much took the bull by the horns and claimed that spot as his own, again, Parssinen was just sort of in no man's land. And, he's the odd man out. And one more aspect of this that I'll discuss before we turn our attention back to tonight's game is the financial aspect of this. I did want to talk about this because Parssinen obviously came over last season in the trade that saw Ryan Lindgren go to the Avalanche for a second-round draft pick. There were other moving pieces in that trade as well. Jimmy Vesey went to the Avalanche. Calvin DeHaan, Ranger legend Calvin DeHaan, came to the New York Rangers. But the big part of that trade was Lindgren for a second rounder. Everything else was very, very, just complimentary pieces moving around. The Rangers obviously gave Parssinen a chance. But I saw a lot of people kind of, dunking on Drury because, what a dumb move. He signed Parssinen for 2 years at $1.25 million a season. I will acknowledge for sure that it's kind of an odd move. It just didn't really seem necessary. But here's the reason why it's basically harmless. Because Parssinen gets waived. If somebody had claimed him on waivers, then obviously the Rangers would be free of the contract. But as things stand right now, nobody did claim him. He's now at the Hartford Wolfpack, and he is still with the organization. So he could be back up later in the season. We'll see. But the way this works now, you can bury a maximum of $1.15 million of somebody's salary cap hit in the AHL. The old Wade Redden rule strikes again here. This is named after Wade Redden because the Rangers really messed up when they gave him a massive contract. And that's a whole story in and of itself. But that means that there's only $100,000 left on the books for the New York Rangers right now of Parssinen's cap hit that is currently counting against the Rangers' salary cap. That is practically nothing. I will be absolutely shocked if that $100,000 prevents the Rangers from doing anything they want to do this season or next season if Parssinen is still with this team by next season. I mean, the league minimum right now is $775K. Next season, I think it goes up to like $850K. So you're talking about basically like an eighth of the cap hit of a player that's making the least amount of money possible in the NHL. It's not going to matter. You do want to be able to hit on some of your low-cost players that you bring in, and we've seen the Rangers do that with players like, Sam Carrick, Jonathan Quick. They certainly come to mind. They've also missed on some players like seemingly Juuso Parssinen, Nick Bonino a couple seasons ago. There's a couple of examples that fall into each category. But again, the people that are all bent out of shape about this lousy $100,000, it doesn't matter. It's not going to matter moving forward. And I'm somebody that always comes on here and talks about how much you need to make every dollar count when it comes to the salary cap. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to prevent the Rangers from doing anything that they want or need to do in either of these next two seasons. If it does, you know what? I'll stand up and I'll admit I was wrong, but I will be shocked if that is the way that it goes out. And as for Parssinen, he goes to the Wolfpack. He's got 34 points in 46 career AHL games. Hopefully he has the right attitude and, goes out there and maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Maybe he's up against some lesser competition and kind of figures out his game a little bit and maybe it works in his favor in the long run. We will see. But in just a second, where I keep everything rolling, I want to shift our attention back to the action tonight, and specifically the third line performance. I thought Berard, Laba, and Brodzinski were very, very good in this game. Going to discuss that and give them their props in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Monarch. Let's be honest. Most of us cannot even name all our financial accounts, let alone what they are worth. Between 401ks, savings, and investments, it is easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. You can organize your accounts, track your spending, and get a better handle on your investments without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where your money is going and how to make it work harder for you. Do not let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarch.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off of your first year. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up tonight's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by discussing the third line here and the new look third line. We saw from left to right here, Brett Berard, Noah Laba, Jonny Brodzinski. I thought these guys looked really good right from the opening faceoff. I mean, they weren't on the ice for the opening faceoff, but obviously you know what I mean. I thought they turned in a real strong, real honest effort in this game here tonight. I should also mention kind of a subplot of this whole thing here, that Connor Sherry was a healthy scratch in this game for the first time all season. I know that's music to the ears of a lot of Ranger fans. We're going to discuss that in greater detail in just a little bit here as well. But I just love the way this third line played. Just a lot of energy, a lot of urgency every single time they were on the ice, getting in there on the forecheck, playing with some speed, some creativity from this line as well. Some interesting passes that resulted in a couple of scoring opportunities. Obviously, Noah Laba did end up scoring a goal in this game. He actually opened the scoring in the first period, despite the fact that the Rangers were being outshot like 11-3 at that point. And I also think that Mike Sullivan and the coaching staff seemed to react to how they were playing as well, because their time on the ice was not like tremendously impressive, but I think it's a little bit more than maybe we're used to seeing these guys get. Brett Berard's out there for 11:05, Brodzinski for 11:50, Noah Laba for 13:41. These are not enormous totals, like I said, but it's more than I would have expected any of them to get on this night. I should also mention here, too, while we're talking about their time on the ice, it was maybe skewed a little bit because the Rangers had to kill off 4 Carolina Hurricane power plays in this game, and Canes went 1 for 4 on the PK. But none of these 3, other than Laba, is going to be out there for the PK, so that might have hurt their ice time a little bit. But, they were out there, and they were also out there in crunch time. There was a situation where I think with less than 3 minutes to go in the game, we saw the Rangers at this point. They were only up by 1 goal, and these guys were all on the ice. Jonny Brodzinski made a really nice defensive play with about 2:40 to go. The Canes were buzzing a little bit in the Rangers zone. He's able to put out his stick, knock the puck out of the Rangers zone and into the neutral zone. So a big play by Brodzinski there. But yeah, I mean, look, they were hustling. They were busting it. First couple of shifts I thought were tremendous, tremendously impressive by this line. You had a play where Jonny Brodzinski fell down in the corner, was still able to get the pass over Brett Berard in front. They weren't able to bury it, obviously, but still a very nice play there. And then you had this goal, just a long offensive zone possession for the Rangers. Laba is able to pick the corner of the net, on the far side there. A great shot by Noah Laba. But great job by everybody on the ice here. Everybody worked hard. Everybody contributed for this goal, a blue-collar goal for the New York Rangers. You've got Robertson making some nice moves at the blue line, eluding his guy. He went up the boards and just kind of one-armed it toward the net. It goes behind the net. Radish is able to recover it. He gets a short backhand pass to Laba. Laba then moves up the right circle and, again, picks that far corner and just a heck of a shot there. But that was awesome to see, kind of a little bit of a partial line change there. Radish was on the ice, but nevertheless, great goal there by Noah Laba. And then the second period, I hated this. Noah Laba and Brett Berard. Again, these guys are out there playing with a lot of energy, a lot of fire, and they both got called for ticky-tack penalties. Berard was for boarding, even though it looked like his opponent basically just kind of fell down. And then you've got the Canes attacking Berard while he's down on one knee. And then you got Laba for a slash. All I can say here is that this stuff better not cost either player, because we know when it comes to the veterans on this team, they get seemingly an endless leash. And that's not exclusive to the Rangers. That's just how it goes in the NHL. All these coaches think alike. They all have to have their veterans out there. And if they make mistakes like this, there are no consequences because of it. So I don't want to see like Laba. I mean, he's not going to get scratched, but I don't want to see him like losing ice time. I don't want to see Brett Berard as a healthy scratch the next game. None of that nonsense, because they both played very well, and you could make a pretty strong case that neither one of these were penalties anyway. So Yeah, there cannot be any consequences for this. But yeah, I mean, again, it was a strong night for these guys. And it's funny if you look at the lineup as a whole. We're kind of focusing in on the third line here, but if you look at this entire lineup for this game here, all of a sudden, you make a couple of tweaks, you get a couple guys back into the lineup, you get Berard being called up from the AHL. It doesn't really look that bad right now. I mean, everything I just mentioned, plus the fact that the two guys who I think are probably the two least effective Ranger forwards, I'm trying to say that as nicely as possible, but the two least effective New York Ranger forwards, Parssinen and Shesterkin, they were both not in this game. Obviously, Parssinen was waived, and Connor Shesterkin was the healthy scratch for the first time. So if you, as the Rangers, want to go with a top six of the obvious six players, Panarin, Trocheck, JT Miller, Cooley, Mika, and Lafreniere, then of everybody that remains, I think this is probably as good as you can do for the Ranger third line. Now, at some point, Gabe Perreault is going to be back, and there's going to be some people that are going to hear that and want him back right now, and I understand that, but the Rangers do want him to develop in the AHL. So for everything at your disposal right now, I mean, this is the line you have to go with. To me, these are the three most dynamic players that return. There's some speed there. There's some physicality there. There's some tenacity there. This could be a really fun line for the Rangers moving forward. Now, as I say this, watch all three of them are on different lines in the next game, or one of them is a healthy scratch or whatever it might be. But again, I think these are your best options. These are the best three players for your third line as things currently stand. And the proof was in the pudding in this game here tonight. I thought these guys were really good in this game. I also mentioned a second ago that we were going to discuss Connor Shesterkin being the healthy scratch for this game. I'm not celebrating this the way that I know a lot of Ranger fans are. I mean, it's the right decision, and I'm happy that it did happen. The biggest reason why I'm happy right now about Shesterkin being a healthy scratch is that at least now we know that this is something that Sullivan and the Ranger coaching staff at least consider to be an option. That's something that, back when Quinn was the head coach, that's something that would drive me crazy with Brett Howden. And I know now there's like this weird, Brett Howden was actually a good player for the Rangers. No, he wasn't. He killed penalties, and he did a decent job at that, and props to him for that. And he's obviously become a better player with Vegas. He was not doing anything really other than killing penalties to help the Rangers win those games. But there was kind of this feeling, for me, and I'm sure a lot of you, why does Brett Howden need to be in the lineup every single game? I mean, this went on and on and on. And then finally, they made him a healthy scratch. And it was just such a relief that, okay, well, at least they consider it an option. It's clearly not an option that they like to do, but they consider it an option. And it's kind of the same thing with Shesterkin here. I mean, it didn't go on quite as long with Shesterkin as it did with Howden. But this had to happen. I mean, what has Shesterkin really done so far? And I mean, it's the same thing that we talked about with Parssinen. At a certain point, it's a numbers game. You can only put 12 forwards into the lineup. And that being the case, certain guys are going to have to sit out, and it should be, and it was Shesterkin for this game here tonight. And let me also say this, and this is nothing personal against Connor Shesterkin. I'm just going by what I've seen this season and what we've all seen from Shesterkin over the years. He should not be back in the lineup in the next game. This should not be a one-game thing. The Rangers won this game, and we know how much coaches don't like to switch the lineup after a win, especially, character win on the road like this against a tough opponent. So Shesterkin should not be back out there in the next game. And if he is back out there in the next game, the only player that for me it's even acceptable for him to replace would be Taylor Radish. I don't want to see somebody like Adam Edstrom come out of the lineup. He was a healthy scratch a couple of times not too long ago, and now he scored a couple of goals in recent games. I certainly don't want to see Brett Berard out of the lineup. He played great in this game, and he's giving the Rangers some energy, and he plays with a lot of fire and intensity, so you got to like that. I don't want to see Jonny Brodzinski come out. I thought he had a really strong game as well. The only player that is acceptable to take out of the lineup to fit Shesterkin back in, for me, again, is Radish. And I wouldn't even do that, but I could at least live with that one. None of these other guys that I just mentioned should be coming out of the lineup for 33-year-old Connor Shesterkin. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. I'm not trying to be mean here. I'm not taking pot shots at Connor Shesterkin. But again, tough decisions have to be made, and you got to play your best players. And for me, for right now at least, and probably going forward, if we're being honest, Shesterkin's probably the guy that should be the odd man out. But we'll call it there. The only other thing I just want to say is, happy Thanksgiving to everybody who celebrates. Enjoy some time with your family. Maybe even go a day without thinking about Ranger hockey. You could do that. I could do that. I probably won't, but in theory, we could all do that. We'll see if any of us actually do. Maybe you got some Ranger family members or friends that you're hanging out with tomorrow. You can talk some Ranger hockey with them. But either way, thank you guys as always It means a lot that you guys obviously, stick with this podcast through all the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride that we call New York Ranger hockey. But we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @JCHIK17. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.